A waitress who serves a man gets fired. Sporting a MAGA cap, but the following day she receives the early morning shock of her life. The city is covered in long shadows from the sun. Roadways as Emily Harper opened the Jake's Diner doors outside of automobiles hummed as they sped past their tires. The bell atop the typical city tune. Emily turned as the door jingled, naturally prepared with her standard smile, but it paused for a moment. Second, as a man wearing a MAGA hat that was brilliant red entered. He wasn't the kind of client usually they would see his hat by itself. He stands out in this section on progress. In the city where these kinds of emblems frequently carried bulky items, yet the man didn't appear to take note of how discussions in the diner paused for a second, and he just courteously nodded and proceeded to He took a seat in the booth in the corner, put his phone down on the table and took a look. Across the menu, a group of university students conversed at the distant booth. Sharp whispers with flitting eyes. An older couple scowled at the man. Emily hesitated as their eyes hardened for a brief moment before seizing her "Good morning" notepad and strolling over. Her voice was warm and firm as she spoke. "What can be done despite the tension in the air?" "I understand," the man said, looking up his blue. There was fatigue when their eyes met. In his eyes, but his grin seemed sincere. "Just a lack of coffee, please," Emily said. Down, then swiveled in the direction of the counter to repair his order while she was working. Heard the whispered remarks from the booths around here are really a MAGA hat. One of the university students exclaimed aloud. Enough repulsive sounds for everyone to hear. Emily felt another ringing in her chest. Tighter, but she continued to concentrate on the coffee pot that she had offered. A variety of rich, poor, harsh, and kind people were her job. To treat all individuals equally when she delivered the coffee, which was ready, to the man's table, grinning quietly, "Thank you." He lifted the cup to his lips and murmured. Karen's lips didn't last long. The manager of the diner bounded out of her pointed heels clicked against the kitchen. She walked up to Emily at the tiles at the counter. Karen was well known for her obsession and her no-nonsense attitude. While maintaining the diner's appearance, she appeared especially irritated today. Karen jerked her head and snarled. "What is the man in the corner doing?" Emily blinked as he was doing this. Coffee. Karen's mouth formed a thin line. "That kind of trouble is unnecessary." What trouble, did Emily ask, honestly? "He's just sitting there, perplexed. He hasn't done anything beyond drinking coffee." Karen's tone increased, yet her voice faltered. "Do you notice that headgear you know is sharper?" Believe she had put in too much effort to allow. She was slowed down by remorse, which individuals like him had, to become self-sufficient solely by. As though she was motionless as she drew into, unpacked her goods and went to her driveway. Unbeknownst to her, the uneasiness persisted. However, the interaction was far from over. After seeing her face, Daniel Ree behavior had made an impression on one that she'd quickly wish she could return to. Samantha's world in the days ahead would be flipped upside down, yet for the time being she stayed blissfully oblivious, contemplating. She had just turned her back on another unmemorable stranger. She had no idea that unfortunate stranger was going to turn into a crucial person in her life's trials. All of the things she believed she understood. Kindness, achievement, and the actual worth of human connection. The week after, Samantha sipped her drink at her workplace, enjoying my favorite iced coffee as perusing emails, and as usual, she had a full itinerary. Deadlines for meetings and a demonstration too. The board later that afternoon, she took great satisfaction in her keen intuition, and they claimed to have no nonsensical attitude features. Gained her the respect of her peers, but she noticed an unusual email. The mandatory company-wide was the subject line. Meeting with the newly appointed CEO, Satta scowled. CEO was unaware of this. The businesses. Mr. Harris, the former CEO, had been present. Was essentially a legend for years. To replace him in the industry would require someone with remarkable curiosity. Received the. She decided to open the email. Looking over the meeting's specifics. Plan for the following day and attendance was. She mumbled, non-negotiable fine, before closing. She would take care of her laptop. Samantha showed up the following day. The air in the spacious conference room humming with whispers as workers. Some people conjectured about the new boss. He was a budding genius, but others stated that he was a third party brought in to. Samantha took a seat after shaking things up. Closer to the rear and more intrigued by watching rather than being observed. When the doors opened, a man entered, and at first, Samantha, the room was quiet. Didn't recognize him because he was wearing a flawless. His shoulders squared with a fitted suit. Confident gestures, but her eyes captured his face, causing her breath to catch. He was the unkempt man from the parking lot that she had thrown out. Her heart became red without hesitation. Raced as she lowered herself farther in her seat. Wishing he wouldn't see her. Was shocked to learn that the stranger she had dismissed because a con artist was present at. The room's leader exudes authority. How can the man now do this? Sleek and authoritative grin as he greeted everyone and said good morning. His voice was warm and firm as he said, I'm your new CEO, Daniel Reeve, has spent my developing careers and running businesses. However, I have spent the last month on many journeys I've gone on, monitoring secretly how individuals handle others just on the basis of appearances. The chamber was filled with guests. Santa noticed that her cheeks were flushed with shame. She leaned back in her chair, wishing she could vanish. Daniel carried on with his tone that is both forceful and supporting. This business has always been about innovation and quality, but I think there's something similar too. It matters how we treat others, not merely our clients but one another. During my time undercover, I've witnessed instances of amazing compassion and kindness, but I've also witnessed the reverse. He took a moment to process what he had said. Samantha's palms became clammy as her thoughts repeated their parking lot encounter. His Conal sounds a lot like a broken record. Ask her to respond scathingly to her nasty laugh. She was certain he had recalled her. Daniel's eyes swept across as though on cue. The room and his gaze fell on her. Stayed for a brief enough period of time to make her tummy turn, but he swiftly moved on. But she was unsure if he knew who she was or was just observing. Daniel concluded his speech, that makes it apparent that I'm here to. I want to lead, but I also want to listen. Business to represent the principles we uphold. Thank you, both within and outside the office. I'm excited to collaborate with you. The room exploded in applause, everyone. However, Samantha's hand remained securely in her. Her mind was too preoccupied to focus on anything else. Was she meant to act phony now? Nothing occurred. Would he even apologize? Mention it as the meeting came to a close. Samantha attempted to leave undetected, but Miss Clark's luck was not in her favor. Daniel called, his voice piercing. She froze at the talk and turned slowly. Yes, mister, her heart was racing in her chest. Karen halted, her eyes tightening. Illegal. Please pardon me, I was fired for not. Treat a customer, Emily, unfairly. Said in a steady yet tranquil tone, which is a breach of labor regulations and fundamental. Karen laughed at my lack of human decency. Fire you for the reason I did so. Emily took a step closer in defiance. Are you going to tell that? All when this is made public, when the media learns that you attempted to kick someone out due of their convictions, since I've already had a attorney, and believe me, they're intrigued. Karen's face became light. You're playing a bluff. After taking out her phone, Emily tapped the screen, as I also own a number of witnesses from yesterday who are more than happy to support me. Karen anxiously looked around at the few people still there. Customers were staring and whispering freely. Even the delivery, among themselves. The motorist who paused during the argument was listening to Karen while viewing the exchange. She lowered her voice and shouted, I don't need. What do you think of this drama at the moment? I want an Emily with her arms crossed. I apologize to Jack, to the clients you ejected with your conduct, and I want you to begin taking care of your staff and clients with dignity, regardless of their identity or they think. Karen's mouth is open, then briefly closed, appearing to she could blow up, but the pressure of the monitoring her and the possibility of legal action. Her magnificent Karen looked to be deflated by action. I apologize louder, a barely audible murmur. In order for everyone to hear Karen's face flushed with shame and rage. I apologize, she should have said louder this time for. Emily nodded. What happened yesterday? Okay, if you don't mind, I have. Emily, where would you be heading the diner? Felt a feeling of success, although she realized that Karen wasn't the only person involved. Wished to convey a more comprehensive message regarding fairness, compassion, and advocating for. Jack's tale inspired what was right. Given the sacrifice made by her father, she chose to let the world know about her experience. She was sitting in the park nearby, writing She posted a social media message regarding what transpired at Jack's diner. Goodwill and the significance of treating everyone with dignity, even when they're differing opinions. She also provided sincere homage to her father, describing how his bravery had motivated her to defend her convictions. She didn't have high expectations when she hit post to occur, but in a matter of hours, her story started to acquire popularity and comments poured in. Some people are encouraging, while others are critical, but all interacting with the more profound. She wanted to initiate a conversation with folks. Shared her post and the local news shortly after. Let's pick up the tale via the outlet. Emily's phone started vibrating the following morning. Constantly receiving notifications, she was overwhelmed, yet profoundly touched by the messages of encouragement from everyone. People from all walks of life contacted out to share their personal encounters with prejudice and confronting injustice. Then she got a message that caught her off guard. Surprisingly, it came from Jake's owner. A man she had never met. Steiner inquired to meet her at a coffee shop in the area that afternoon. Intrigued and somewhat anxious, Emily concurred when she got there. An elderly man in a dapper suit stood to. Hello, Emily Harper, he said. My name is Paul Jennings, and I'm reaching out. Emily, who owns Jake's Diner, shook his hand. I didn't anticipate hearing from you, Whaley. I heard Paul motion for her to take a seat. Regarding the events in the diner, and I wanted to personally apologize for Karen's conduct does not align with the principles of Emily, my business associate, then arched an eyebrow. Why does she continue to manage things on Paul's side? She ran her hand through his hair. Won't last long because I've already begun the procedure to replace her, however I would like. Desired to do more than simply offer an apology. I want to give you a job management opportunity. Emily was taken, in case you're curious. Back management, you shown honesty and bravery, Paul stated. Those are the attributes I'm looking for in a person managing my diner, and to be honest, I believe you would do Emily did a greater job than Karen ever did. It was alluring to think about his offer, yet she wasn't certain whether she wanted to go back. Reaching the location where everything had occurred, the chance to build a more hospitable and equitable setting was difficult to resist. I'll give it some thought. At last, she said, but only if I have the freedom to actually alter things. Paul grinned. It is precisely what I am hoping for. As after leaving the coffee shop, Emily felt a feeling of closure regarding the past events. The past 3 days had been emotional and frantic. However, they had also made her aware of the strength to defend what was right, in the surprising ways that life might reward you for completing only one task. Remained in her memory Jack's remarks regarding she wasn't done with her father's courage, paying tribute to his legacy, but something told Emily this was only the beginning. After her meeting with Paul, she walked home. Jennings. The cool nighttime air pricked her cheeks, her mind racing as she thought about his offer as a management position would provide her with stability. She was in dire need, but it also carried a burden she wasn't sure of. She was prepared to carry the burden, truly assume a leadership position, and make the phone change she desired. Buzzed in her pocket and dragged her away. She assumed it was a text message from Jack. Will you be able to meet there, Callahan? Jack? I believe I want to show you something. Emily's hesitation was crucial because it only paused before responding. Emily was certain when and where Emily discovered, 1 hour later, herself outside a humble the Veterans Center on the town's edge. Jack was standing near the door, his face flushed. Despite MAGA's notable absence, he greeted her, warmly grinning. Thanks for coming. Stated, I think you have something here. Emily should have followed Jack inside, where the walls were bordered by pictures, plaques, and souvenirs. The air was devoted to local veterans, rich in a feeling of the past, and Jack guided her to a sizable photo-covered bulletin board and handwritten notes, which are the according to Memorial Wall. Jack, it's for this town's soldiers who served. And Emily's breath didn't reach home, captured as she looked across the board. There was a picture of her close to the center. Father grinning slightly at his uniform, card with Reed Sergeant Michael underneath it. Harper is a hero to both his fellow soldiers and his. Her eyes filled with familial tears as she tried to touch the picture. She muttered, I've never seen this before. Jack nodded. I figured you ought to be aware the significance of your father to the public who accompanied him. He wasn't merely he was a good soldier who led and protected others. He motivated us to improve. Emily wiped. Her heart swelled with both her tears and her heart. I'm proud and saddened that you showed Jack touched her with his hand. Shoulder that your father held dear. Defending the moral high ground in every situation. The price you reminded me of yesterday. It's uncommon for him to have such courage, Emily nodded, reaffirming her desire to pay tribute to him, Jack, not only by keeping him in mind, but by creating a distinction. Emily called the following morning Paul Jennings and took on the role as manager. Role at Jake's Diner, she outlined. Her idea of the diner as a location where everyone can go, regardless of background or convictions that Paul was influenced by. Her tenacity provided her with unwavering support. Emily took over as manager on the first day of exciting but nerve-wracking. She greeted the employees in a strong yet polite manner and kindness, highlighting her intention to restore the diner's standing in her eyes. Many of her co-workers were surprised, relieved that the leadership has changed. Since Karen had left, they had remained optimistic for a more favorable setting. One of Emily's the initial step was to establish the diner's community wall inspired Jack had displayed near the Veterans Memorial. She set aside a portion of the diner for her to honoring local tales of generosity. Client service and tenacity were invited to submit images and notes, making an area that mirrored. In the meanwhile, the restaurant's new inclusive spirit. Karen refused to accept her firing. In private, she disseminated gossip about Emily, asserting that she was unqualified and inexperienced to operate the diner, but her word of Emily's integrity backfired in. Her and Jack's story had gone viral. Social media, which extends beyond the diner, and local news reports. Karen discovered herself becoming more and more alone. Her own activities have damaged her reputation. Karen entered the diner one evening. Emily noticed her unreadable look. Her right away without flinching. Rather, she approached and greeted her. What do you expect from the previous manager's gaze? Emily inquired in a calm but. Karen was forceful and paused before speaking. Wanted to clarify that I was mistaken regarding anything for which you defended that man. I didn't notice you or this location. Emily studied back then, but I do today. Karen's expression as it searches for authenticity. She paused for a while before nodding. Thank you. I hope you've learned that from saying that. Karen nodded in agreement with everything that was said. Once, after which they turned and left. After several months, Emily felt a feeling of closure went by, and Jake's Diner prospered under Emily is the community wall's leader. Became a focal point that attracted visitors from regulars from all across the city, brought back new. As patrons arrived, the eatery reclaimed its standing as a location where everyone was welcomed. One afternoon when Emily replenished the client's coffee, saw Jack seated in the identical corner he had occupied that fateful day's booth. She joined him after he waved her over. Grinning, "How is the new management doing?" Jack inquired, and Emily answered with a busy smile. Jack laughs, "But he's pretty excellent." Reclined back with a contented expression. Emily's smile would make your dad proud. Softened, "Many thanks for everything, Jack." Emily took a quick look at her father's picture on the community wall now, hung with dozens of other people. Heart grew full with appreciation and tenacity. She had discovered her way not only as a supervisor but also as someone who stood for justice, compassion, and the heritage of a hero, and she was aware that just the start.